A lot of people are interested in this online course concept now, but I feel like, including myself and many other people, we just don't know where to start and where to begin. And it seems like that's what you help people with. And
Yeah, it's really a whole package deal. Digital course strategy is something that I came up with kind of on my own, but I was seeing a lot of marketing people out there selling courses, and I was seeing a lot of like educators trying to sell courses on like the various platforms out there, like Teachable and Udemy and all these places. And it was like, well, I don't think anybody's getting rich quick because, there's definitely like, if you're good at marketing, you can get some first time sales. I'll hand you that. But then it would be like people would be doing a really good job and then they wouldn't be getting like second time, third time, or like even repeat business. And I was like, well, why is that? What's going on? So I started to look at the actual courses because, I bought a few courses in my time.
sure.
Um, but I started to notice this major flaw in how courses were being made. And this was like
We can choose our own new path, not the one that we were settling with. Listen, folks, we only get one life, and we can make it epic. We can make it grand epic. And we're going down a new path, and we want you to join us.
Now, all right, Julie. Well, thank you for joining me on the Path to Epic show. And for those of you who are listening or watching, Julie, well, we've known each other through the dance community for many years as acquaintances, not really closely, but I know you've been in teaching for a long time. And I'm excited to see that you now have a family, you have a child since 2015. You've been working in the industry of as a teacher, and it seems like after you had a child, you had maybe a change in kind of what you wanted for yourself. And so I'd love to hear about what you're working on currently.
yeah, well, as you know, thanks. Oh, by the way, thank you for having me on. I didn't want to just dive in, but I was just thinking back to how we met because you mentioned dance. And shortly after that, I know that you traveled the world. I was traveling the world. We were doing kind of different things than what we're doing right now. Um, but yeah, I've always been a teacher. And that's another point that we connected on was the Spanish connection because you were traveling and wanting to learn. So yeah, after all of that, I came back and I basically, started working for Humboldt State University, and it was love. I loved exactly what I was doing. The students were great. My colleagues were great. Um, but at some point, I realized that even with a master's degree, I was not going to be moving up the ladder as quickly or at all. There are some major glass ceilings in academia if you don't hold a doctoral degree. And if you're a woman and you want to get a doctoral degree after a certain point in life, it gets a lot more complicated. Um, I met my life partner and we wanted to have a family. And so, um, just to be clear, I didn't want to get a PhD. There's a lot that's involved with that I just didn't want to do. But what I decided after having my son was that it didn't mean that I couldn't make an impact in a bigger way, and that I had some major skills. And actually, before my son was born, I was consulting with the state of California for a community college, developing curricula for them. And it became really apparent that not everybody thinks about education or how to use their expertise in the same way. And so that's kind of where this all started. Fast forward a few years, and I'm helping business owners to expand and to grow their businesses, and some of them to even scale their businesses because they have profitable businesses, but they want to add that digital course so that they can not only make that bigger impact, but achieve the freedom lifestyle that I've been able to have with my son and my family.
Yeah, so perfect. Thank you for that. What's the benefit of digital courses from the consumer standpoint? I think I wanted to start with that. Like, if you're a teacher and your passion is teaching, how do you benefit the people that are learning or students through this format?
Well, here's the secret about education, Nick, and maybe going through your own studies, and I know definitely in your own pathway to entrepreneurship, you have been highly motivated, right? So when you're motivated to learn and you want to learn something, there's usually nothing that's going to stop you. But as a teacher, you learn how to harness that motivation just a little bit better than, like, say somebody comes to you and wants to buy your course like a digital product. So in being able to connect with the student better, in knowing what to look for and knowing how to create a format that's going to work for the student, you can really achieve some amazing results. So if somebody comes to me and says, I want to be able to do this by, like, I want to learn whatever you're teaching. Maybe it's Spanish, maybe it's, how to create a course. And they say, I want to learn this because I want to do blah, blah, blah with it. Well, we tap into that every step of the way, and we always come back to that goal. I don't just teach people that are in digital courses. I actually teach high-end strategy for businesses. But if a business were to come to me and say, I want to be able to do what I do better, or at least to do it online as well, then that's where we would start. We would take the students' motivation and we would really leverage their expertise to be able to tap into that, even if it's a digital product that feels like canned or like prepared.
Okay, and then if as a professional, if you have some kind of expertise, maybe you have, a lot of people have a full-time job, they have some kind of expertise. How can they leverage the online course to maybe reach more people, create a second income, or maybe move a whole different direction? And I'm actually curious kind of a little more about, was being a mother a big factor in you deciding to move this direction, being able to spend more time with your family?
I think being a mom is a big factor in what I do. I don't think it's the only factor. It's kind of hard to put it in black and white terms because, life is so many things at once. But yeah, after my son was born, it was incredibly stressful to be able to do everything that I needed to do as a mom, and then to make sure that I was on campus by a certain time so that I could prep my lesson and walk into that classroom. So you could say it was a scheduling aspect. And I know a lot of people don't have an issue with this particular thing, but my child had some extra needs. He was the quintessential like mama's boy, and we couldn't get him to take a bottle. He wasn't quite old enough to eat or to be on his own. Obviously there was daycare, childcare, and all of that to coordinate as well. So there was just a lot of details. Plus, as a university professor, there is no shortage of demand on your expertise, on your time, on your, ability to go into a classroom prepared to teach 25 plus students. And so after one semester of doing in the classroom work again, I spoke with my chair and said, maybe this is time to move me on to the digital course project that we've got going. And he agreed that that would help free up some of my time. So I then started teaching half online, half in the classroom. And that actually solidified my decision to go more into the online space. It also opened me up to the fact that there are so many other people that are going through the same things. And whether it's the fact that they have a child or they have a family that they want to spend time with, maybe it's like an elderly parent, maybe it's like a spouse, there is just, something wrong with a system that says you have to be bound to a desk 40 hours a week. That's a lot of time.
It is. In
Yeah.
my case, travel was a desire too. So there's a lot of reasons to have a more flexible.
Yeah. And, as a world citizen myself, I have at times found myself living in other places and not being able to achieve an income, not a living income. Before I came back to the United States in 2010, 2011, I was in Belgium, and I had moved there with a partner who was doing a PhD program at the time. It's not actually my husband, but this is like pre my husband. And my whole thing at that time was I was going to become an EU citizen. We were going to live happily ever after, la, la, la. but that I was going to be able to have an international based business. And the reason that that didn't fly at the time was for a couple reasons. But I started out my journey there trying to figure out how I was going to work in the Belgian system. And even though I speak 4 languages fluently, I am a world citizen, I have a master's degree, I'm very good at what I do, I was unemployable. And so that was really
Wow.
eye-opening. I know, can you imagine?
Wow.
Yeah, and I was in the part of Belgium where it wasn't just good enough to speak English, uh, and it wasn't good enough to speak French. Like I actually had to speak Flemish as well. So I started learning Flemish, but it was like very apparent that there were other invisible doorways, you know, between me and like actually working at the level that I could work at. There are lots of educators there, and there are lots of um, there are lots of people who want those university positions. It's very competitive. So like you had doctoral people that were like going on their 4th, 5th, you know, postdoc, and it was like becoming this postdoc lifestyle for them, which is, by the way, like a research job, not teaching, not tied to like actual university benefits or even like a secure.
That's not your passion, right? You like to actually teach, sounds like.
So, well, it wasn't even about the teaching at the time, but that reality check for me was, it was so eye-opening. It was like, well, I'm either going to have to figure something out like that is going to be sustainable for me, or I'm going to have to come up with my own thing. And I'd come up with my own thing before, so I was kind of like, yeah, let's do this. But even then, it was like too early for me to know like even the resources to tap into. Like I did not know how to run an online business. And being in Belgium, where a lot of the business wasn't, and the conversation even at that time, because like now you go online and you're like, oh, Gary Vee, oh, you know, Marie Forleo, oh, like all these like major
Right.
influencers talking about it left and right, and like YouTube, every other channel is a business. You know, that wasn't the reality in 2011. So
Hmm.
when I came back to the States, I was looking forward to like, you know, working for a company that was going to pay me, that was going to help me advance my career. And then I realized that the big problem with that is that, you know, we either have this massive freedom in our lives where we don't have enough money, but we have a lot of time freedom, or, you know, we're tied to this desk and we're expected to work so many hours a week. And that may or may not work for our actual like schedules, you know?
Story of my life. I've
Yeah.
had times chained to the desk making good money, and then other times I was traveling but I wasn't making money, and I'm like, how do I combine the two?
I know, right? And everybody wants to know that, because it's like, even if you have like a thriving business, at some point, you're going to have something else to do that's not just showing up to work. You know, I see so many CEOs that are like tied into their business in this role that's like the business would collapse if they didn't show up, and they don't feel like they have enough income to actually hire out a team. But with education being my strong point, I've managed to develop a team, to develop systems, and to run my business on like a fairly shoestring budget. And, you know, it's in a great position to be scaling again this fall. So, you know, I think if I can do it and I have a small child and I'm only working part-time, then I can definitely help other people to do the same.
That's really cool. A lot of people are interested in this online course concept now, but I feel like, including myself and many other people, we just don't know where to start and where to begin. And it seems like that's what you help people with. And
Yeah, it's really a whole package deal. You know, digital course strategy is something that I came up with kind of on my own, but I was seeing a lot of marketing people out there selling courses, and I was seeing a lot of like educators trying to sell courses on like the various platforms out there, you know, like Teachable and Udemy and all these places. And it was like, well, I don't think anybody's getting rich quick, because, you know, there's definitely like, you know, if you're good at marketing, you can get some first time sales. I'll hand you that. But then it would be like people would be doing a really good job, and then they wouldn't be getting like second time, third time, or like even repeat business. And I was like, well, why is that? You know, what's going on? So I started to look at the actual courses, because, you know, I bought a few courses in my time.
sure.
But I started to notice this major flaw in how courses were being made. And this was like a couple years back. So courses, I will say now, are looking a lot better. But that's just the thing. A lot of courses focus on the front end technology, glitter, glamour, all of that front end stuff. And the back end is not being held together like it should because of the motivational factors that we're talking about before. You know, somebody buys a course, they're excited about learning about it. They get to like page 2 or like lesson, you know, the second part of lesson 1, and they stop. And that course stays in their downloads file for like eternity and dies.
Yeah.
It's not because their dream died. It's not because they moved on from their shiny object. You know, it could be that they have like fallen out of love with that particular solution. But more than people would like to admit, it's the fact that the course didn't really connect with the student. It's the fact that to get somebody to self-study and to like follow along in a course, there have to be other ways of holding their hand along the way, even if you can't personally be there. So
some kind of reward system, I feel like, or some kind of way to feel like you've accomplished something, I would think.
You know, our gamification things, and I think for the younger generation, maybe that's exciting, you know, to imagine that it's a game. But even then, it's kind of a stretch. Like, you know, my education is not a game. And one could, you know, one could argue, oh, they're just not sufficiently into it. And I think that a lot of the blame has been put onto the student, but it's not the student's fault. And it's not fully the entrepreneur's fault either. But in bringing in this element of like, what is a good course? How are you going to really, truly produce results? And how are you going to get the person from point A to point Z without, you know, without lecturing them to death or creating assignments that actually don't advance their business? You know, how do you place the ownership back on the student, but in a way that gets them excited to do it, to implement it, to see the results in their business? Because, you know, you could take a course, learn all the information like by listening to it, but it's still not practical knowledge because they probably can't implement it in their own business yet.
That is valid. There's so much information out there. All the information, there's so much overload of information, but how do you create a course or teach in a way that it makes it easy for people to implement and take action, motivates them to take action?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'd love to dive deeper into this, but I am going to have a hard stop in about 1 minute.
Awesome. That's a perfect cliffhanger. Thank you. We'll have to continue this conversation on a future date.
Sounds good, Nick. Thanks so much for having me on your podcast. I am so excited to see the direction you're taking in your business.